And welcome back. Joining us for our second segment, it's a one-on-one conversation that I'm about to get into. I have been joined on set this morning by mental health therapist Tina Cuellar. Good morning.
Good morning.
How's it going?
Good.
So for the benefit of our viewers who are probably wondering what we're going to be talking about this morning, while you are a mental health therapist, we're going to be discussing grief. And it ties in perfectly with the fact that in our Friday newscast for the past several weeks, we've been exploring grief and the bright side of being able to get over or get through this journey, right? Where do you want us to begin from? Because grief, as far as I'm aware, and perhaps speaking as a man, isn't something we talk about much.
No.
We compartmentalize certain things and then we just try to move on.
No. It's the word once I heard was we're very grief illiterate. And I think that's a fair statement. I think grief makes a lot of people uncomfortable. And until you've experienced it, there's a whole other relationship that grows with it. It's a journey. It doesn't happen overnight. It's not something that you can magically say, okay, within 2 years, I'm over this. I've put it in the box. I'm not going to deal with it. A lot of time, many men try to put things in the box. But what happens is every time we compartmentalize a grief or compartmentalize some form of loss, we stack up. Eventually, it bleeds through to our other relationships, and that's how it shows up. So I think one of the first most important thing is to understand that it is a journey, one, and two, it doesn't end. I think the anticipation for a lot of people is it has a time frame, but it's not time bound. We all deal with it differently. We all cope with it differently. I think another huge factor is I've been working at Project Heal for years now in the St. Martin's area, or St. Martin's de Porres School. And when we started off, a large part of it was we kept on thinking trauma. These children have been traumatized. They've been exposed to all this sort of stuff. But a lot of when we started to peel back at it, a lot of it is grief, whether they've lost a parent to gun violence, whether they've lost a grandmother, whether they've lost where they originally live. You know, there's always something that they're losing. And when losses like that accumulates, what happens is it's referred to as complex grief. And it's not that simple, you know, because grief also comes in waves. So we have to unpack what that also means.
Yeah, that's deep.
Yes.
I'm sitting here and I'm thinking about the losses that I've suffered. And some may not necessarily be in terms of family members per se. I look at some of the friendships that I've had over the years, and a certain time in my life where I felt like, you know, what's the sense of it all if a lot of what we're doing is grieving people who were around us who have gone and what have you. And you're right, it's a journey, right? I don't know that it has ever ended for me. I just try to find other things that I can do that takes my mind off thinking about, you know, the what ifs. Because when you look at, like in my case, for instance, when I think of some of the friends that I've lost, and I would sit in a corner and think to myself, okay, what if I had known something that I could have said that would have changed the course of what happened? But then you just wander off into the what ifs. And so I say, okay, you know what? I need to be able to find something to occupy my time. And if I'm doing that, then I, you know, it goes farther into the recesses of my mind. But you're right to say that, you know what, it comes in waves. It's not something that once I've compartmentalized, I'll forget it there forever. Sometimes I find myself and this image just comes right back in front of me and I'm going through the motion all over again.
Absolutely.
And here's the thing, Tina. Sometimes I feel like I'm alone in this, but then I realize I talk to other people and okay, I'm not different.
I'm not special.
I'm not special. Other people are going through it as well.
Exactly. So there are two things I want to follow up on. The what ifs. What ifs in a loss, whether again, and we're talking about various loss of friendships, loss of marriages, sense of betrayal, loss of innocence, and actually loss of a person. We always have that what if. We talk about it as a bartering stage, like what if I was there earlier? What if I had gone? What if? One of the parts of the journey, and again, everybody's journey and pace is significantly different. It's, I think, one of the best ways in the course that I took that described it is grief is like a fingerprint. It's different for everybody.
Yeah.
So like for instance, I can have an entire family lose a mother. We will all grieve differently. We will all react differently. There's nothing that is identical. So with that said, we all tend to go through that phase of what if, like I wonder if I may, and if I may talk up, and if I had said this. What we do is we replace those what ifs with even if I had, even if I had said something, even if I did something, this is where I'm at. Because I think part of the hard part of grief and its journey is we can stick at the what if, but it cannot change where we're at. Where we're at is that person is no longer in our life, whether an actual human being or as a part of our lives. So switch it up to even if. That's one of the biggest things. I think another thing that's really important, and I love these two words to describe grief. It can be traumatic, but most importantly, it is transformative. What people don't talk about with grief is life is never the same after a loss. You're not the same as Annie. You're not the same version, because that version, when we're talking about friendship, had that friend.
Yeah.
I'm not the same person. I lost my mom. I'll never be the same person. And I'm working on that journey. And so what's important to realize is that it changes us and it doesn't leave us. I think a large part also is grief is our reminder that there was love, that there is love. Because if I didn't love and care for that person, I wouldn't be feeling what I'm feeling right now. These feelings wouldn't continue as we go along.
I think, and perhaps I'll use this as my moment to share certain things. So when I deal with grief, it's not only the loss of friendship, but the loss of people who have been one way, shape, or form instrumental in my life, right? And it's interesting that you talk about St. Martin's, because I am always a champion of my neighborhood. And where I'm from, we take the good and the bad and try to make the best situation for ourselves, right? And while I've sort of gotten over some elements or some aspects of my past, the idea that your exposure growing up in that community, you see a lot, you learn a lot, and in some cases at a very young age, you find yourself having to make certain decisions that could alter your life one way or the other.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
And so in my case, I've lost a lot of friends physically, like they're dead and gone.
Yeah.
And it took me a while to process all of that, right? In the context of gang rivalries and that sort of stuff. And while in that particular moment, I couldn't understand what was happening because I was removed, I was outside of the country, but every time I came back to Belize was to bury people. And I'm thinking to myself, I said, okay, how do I get over this? What do I need to do to be able to be a better person, right? And so that's where the transformation came about. I realized, okay, I'm not designed or built for that. As much as I've been exposed to it around these people, my purpose can't be to become a statistic to that. And so I had to go through this process of like reflecting and figuring out, okay, what is my place? If I come back into this particular situation, how do I make it better for the next person? Yeah. And so that was like one of those soul searching things. And when I came out of it, when I began to see the light, I realized, okay, let me use what I do as my profession to be able to shed light on certain things.
Absolutely, and that's one of the stages of the journey about finding meaning, finding purpose behind it. And I'll tell you, that part is really hard. Yeah. Because to allow that full transformation means that you're taking that love and that pain and transforming it into something that you feel will be helpful. But I think one of the important parts is that regardless of the continued transformation, there will be waves. I saw waves just now. And waves are okay. Waves come in various sizes. They come in anger, they come in sadness, they come in frustration. But allowing the wave to pass, because it's just that, it is a wave.
You know what's part of it too? The feeling of isolation, even when you're in a sea of people. Absolutely.
Yeah. I'll tell you, so personal experience too as well. So And I liked how the guy that I did the certificate, David Kessler, put it. And it's funny, my daughter called it before I called it. I have my waves. And so she'll walk in sometimes, and it might be for various reasons. And she's like, "You're having an Abby moment, aren't you?" And it's the truth. I'm having a mom moment. She calls her Abby, but I'm having a mom moment where my tears are there, my sadness is present, and I'm feeling it. I don't run from it. And so I have learned, and she has learned to know that when mom is having her Abby moment, she'll give me a hug, but she knows that that's my moment. So it's learning. I mean, I think one of the biggest things, if I could tell people, is have your moments. Don't let anybody deprive you of that. When I say that we're illiterate, for me, I'd prefer the word a little bit insensitive. We don't know how to deal with it. And it's not that we don't care. It's just like when I see somebody react like that, it makes me uncomfortable. So it's kind of like, let's get out of here. It's going to be okay.
Yeah.
At least you still had at least nothing no wrong. And all you're doing in a lot of those cases is doing exactly what you referred to earlier, letting that person feel more alone, lonely, ashamed, and invalidated. And so one of the biggest importance is just being, I might not get it, but yeah. And being physically present and having them have their moment versus trying to quickly get out of it. I'll tell you one of the biggest things that I've also learned about grief. So in Belizean culture, and I love it, and for the first time I experienced it also with my mom passing, is that when somebody passes, people show up. People show up with food, people at your house all the time. And there's a large part of it, I remember distinctly, some of us, my sisters, we would hide because at that point you don't want to see people, but it's a cultural thing. And so they're there for wakes, for moments, repasses. The real pain happens when all of that is gone.
Yep.
He or she's buried. Everybody, life goes on. Mine doesn't. And what that means and what that feels like for me and how lonely that feels is one of the hardest things. And one of the things that I think as a friend or as a family member to bear in mind is those are the times to pick up the phones. Those are the times to show up. Those are the times to be there, because that's when the reality of it really hits.
There are perhaps cases where some people try their best, so to speak, to deny themselves of that journey.
Absolutely.
Right? Perhaps they're in denial, and so they say,
Absolutely.
You know what? While, yes, this person may have been buried, or while I may have suffered another loss, or what have you, that brings you to that state of grief, they don't allow themselves, they don't let go, in a manner of speaking, to go through it. They just either bottle it up or tell themselves, okay, that's not, I don't have time for that. I move on.
Absolutely.
But here's the thing, it all comes crashing down at some point.
It does. I mean, and I've seen people 3 years after those griefs. I've seen people 10 years after those griefs. I've worked with people where that level of grief, and not necessarily, again, not a person, but that level of grief of their childhood of some sort comes crashing through to a break, to a psychotic break, to a nervous breakdown, whatever they want to refer to it as, because their body is got to a capacity that I can't compartmentalize anymore. I can't do this anymore. So if you don't want to do anything about it, let me show you how you have to. And so it pushes people to that extent. I mean, we talk a lot about the idea of new, like more acute grief, more new grief, meaning there's going to be a time period, at least at first, even first to 3 years they talk about, where you allow that person to grieve however he or she deems to. For example, if it's in a hospital or a specific street and that person doesn't want that past that street, don't push him. Don't tell him you have to try, you have to. Let them. Now, if we're passing 3 years and it's still an issue, that's when the concern then becomes a little bit more, and we talk about, okay, maybe we need to talk to somebody about it. But I think for a large part, people want to push you out of their grief, not because they don't care, but because it makes them uncomfortable. And I always tell people, until you really have had some level of severe loss, your eyes open up differently to it.
I take away two things that I think about when I look at grief and dealing with grief. I think of introspection, and I also think of catharsis, right? Where you have to look inward if you're trying to find an answer to how you can be a better you in terms of in the face of what you're going through, and how do you work your way through it.
Yeah.
For me, what is cathartic for me is being able to write how I feel, either in poetry or in prose or what have you. That's just my way of.
No, it's a form of journaling, and it is definitively
that's my way of
helping.
dealing with it, right?
Yeah.
But other people find various activities to be able to channel and pass through those emotions as well.
A large part of what people don't realize is grief needs to be witnessed. You need to have, whether it's in the writing, whether it's in a group, whether it's in a one-on-one, it needs to be witnessed. You need to have that moment where that vulnerability is seen, heard, and validated. I vividly remember a conversation having with several people, and it was different loss. It was the loss of a husband of over 50 years. The other one was in her 30s, so she lost her husband for 6 years, a dad, a mom, all different scenarios. But that conversation in and of itself, where we all spoke about what that first year is, because one of the things, if you've talked to somebody that has lost a very close loved one, those first couple years are a blur. If you ask them, what did you do that first year? They don't have a lot of remembrance of it because they're going through the motions. They're compartmentalizing, waking up, showering, going to work, doing all that they can do. They're existing. They're not living. They haven't reached that stage of being able to transform that pain into something else, or to find meaning into the loss of that parent or that person. It's not that simple. And like I said, it's hard because it's not something people want to talk about. It's not. It makes people so uncomfortable to even begin the conversation. Oh, absolutely.
Perhaps with women, you have your circle, your sisterhood, and what have you. As guys, we have our own fraternity as well, but that's never a topic of discussion. So if I'm around my friends and we've all suffered loss in one form or another, I don't come and say, hey, how you feel?
Absolutely.
Never. It's almost unsaid. So I'll pop a bottle of beer and give you a beer and take a beer, and then we just have a drink, and then we find something else to talk about. But the elephant in the room remains much there.
And you said it perfectly. Men will pop a beer, will smoke a weed, will go out. In some cases, even the womanizing can be seen as one of the ways they cope, but they will find other mechanisms just not to cope. And the thing is, what ultimately happens is that's still a way of bleeding, showing that they're not okay. I mean, I have had, when I end up working with couples, where there are moments when the man realizes, and because he's in front of his wife and he's in front of a third party, they do kind of there's no other man there, so they kind of then let the guard down about it. But that takes time because it's not a practice. We don't practice with our little boys about talking about grandmother's dead or mom's passing or anything. We kind of suck it up, buck up, you're a man, you're not supposed to do that. There's no room for that. But I mean, I've always told people, I love what I do. Genuinely love what I do. But nothing is more transformative for me when I actually see a man or a woman, but it's a little bit more, because when it's harder with men. When you see them come to that self-actualization moment of taking in that pain that they experience and knowing with some level of retrospect, shit, that's what's been bothering me this whole while, and I didn't take the time for it. So those conversations needs to happen at some point, but again, it's not simple within our cultural context. It's not.
So before I let you go, we need to talk about the certification.
Yes.
Talk to us about that journey and so now being able to make that achievement.
So that journey, I've had in the last 5 to 6 years various losses. I've had the loss of my mother, the loss of my marriage, the loss of friendships with betrayals, and then for some this seems like a little, but for me it was big, the loss of a pet. And I think definitely the one after my mom, I wanted to understand. There were so many emotions, there were so many things going on in me, in my body, in who I was showing up as a therapist, how I was showing up as a mother and as a friend. And so for me, I wanted to understand. And I've been following David Kessler forever. because I think a lot of what he says resonates. And so when the certificate course came up, I said, sign up. And it was so interesting because the way he dealt with the class, like there was always a Q&A after every class. And it's interesting you're attracted to it because of the same reason I'm attracted to it. So there were some people that wanted to talk about their stories. And his first question was always immediately, how long ago has your person passed? And if it was below 2 years, you're not ready to talk about this, we'll talk about this at another time. He's so trained in the sense of knowing there's time for these things, that the first 2 years is so delicate and critical to that person for them to grieve how they need to before we can get to, okay, let's talk about that not being healthy, let's talk about that being a little bit dysfunctional, having them have that space. So that was my first attraction to it. And I think a large part of it is when I lived it, even though I have been practicing therapy for so many years and I have the schooling on it and I know it, the personal experience with it has been so eye-opening that it made me want to do more for it.
So there's a distinction for you though, because you're in a class of your own, so to speak. You're the only person that has gone through this entire process, this course, and have the certification in Belize. How does that achievement feel for you?
I think when I work with people, and I've had referrals that said, I want to come to you because you lost your mom and I just lost my mom and you get it. And for those clients, and they know who they are, when I connect with them, and it's a sense of just, it feels good to see them because I know how important it is to be seen. It's good to sit with them and you walk away with such gratification of saying, I hope that I made an impact in his or her life. And so I think, interestingly, after the certificate, I've found more reward. I am trying to do the one thing that makes Tina most uncomfortable, which is more exposure, because I figure if I have more exposure, it also means that I can help people more. I like to fly under the radar, so this and videos and stuff like that, not my thing, but I guess that's the way you get out there. So that's also my help.
Okay, so my final question for you is about vocation. I believe in vocation.
Absolutely.
I am doing what by design and by divinity I was placed here to do. Do you believe that in your course of work, your profession, that's your calling?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I enjoy it. And I'm always clear with my friends and my colleagues which part I enjoy. I enjoy this. I do not enjoy the stand up in front of a crowd of 10, 15, 20, whoever and talk. I despise it. I get pushed into it a lot. But I like this. Being able to sit for 50 to 60 minutes with a person and walk their journey with them. Get to understand what they're experiencing is a gift. Because I also know that sitting on that side of the chair and sharing is also so hard. And so the bravery they bring to that room and allowing me into it, it's gratifying. And so I'm definitely within where I want to be right now.
Thanks for having this conversation with me. It's been quite enlightening.
I hope so. Thank you very much too.
You're
as
welcome.
Well.
All right, so we're going to take a next commercial break. And when we return, it's going to be to sit with our friends from St. Joseph's School as they discuss the upcoming fair.